The Bordeaux hall shimmered under chandeliers and white linen, elegant and composed, every fork aligned, every candle choreographed, yet beneath it all, tension hummed. Whispers danced from waiter to waiter. "She's coming." Nervous eyes flicked toward the entrance. The name alone shifted the air, Alexandra Sterling. Powerful, poised, ruthlessly precise. She was the kind of woman whose reputation arrived before she did. Staff had heard it all. The shaken waiter who cried over the wrong vintage, the maitre d', who repositioned a table 4 times to match her preference, the chef who fell silent after a single glare. No one wanted to face her tonight. The hostess at the front, young, barely trained, clutched her reservation book like a shield. "Think she'll notice if I disappear?" she whispered to the bartender. He offered only a strained smile. Silverware gleamed under extra polish. Glasses were checked again. Even the pianist softened his melody. Then, the front doors opened. Heels clicked against marble. Alexandra Sterling entered like she owned not just the space, but the expectation inside it. Her coat, black and tailored to the inch, swung as she moved. Her eyes swept the room, measuring, judging. A practiced hush followed her. She paused, then removed her gloves slowly, precisely. Her voice, cool and deliberate, drifted into the stillness. "I despise being kept waiting." She didn't look at anyone in particular. She didn't have to. The words landed everywhere. Staff scrambled. The young hostess found her voice and rushed forward with a nervous welcome. But Alexandra brushed past her, already scanning for her table. Except the best seats were full, mistakenly double-booked. Only one option remained, a table in the farthest corner. Someone was already seated there. Matthew Collins sat quietly at the table, his posture upright but relaxed. Everything about him said he didn't belong here, not in this restaurant wrapped in silk and crystal. His shirt was clean but plain, his shoes polished but worn. He'd ironed his collar that morning with care, but he knew the truth, this wasn't his world. He came early, he always did. Tonight wasn't about him. It was about his daughter, Lily, 9 years old, with a head full of questions and eyes that believed her dad could fix anything. She wasn't here, but she was the reason he was. The invitation came from an old friend. Brian, now working in corporate circles, had offered to bring him along. "You should be in front of people who matter," Brian had said. "Just be in the room." So Matthew said yes, not for himself, for the hope that maybe it would turn into something more, a connection, a job, stability. Groceries were getting tighter, rent always loomed, and Lily would need new school shoes soon. He smoothed the edge of his menu, untouched glass of water still full. He reminded himself, discomfort was a small price to pay. He was here for her. The storm arrived. Alexandra crossed the restaurant, a silent wave crashing through glittering conversation. Servers stepped aside as if something cold brushed past them. The hostess followed, whispering apologies, pointing discreetly to the only open table. She stopped right in front of Matthew. For 2 full seconds, she said nothing, just stared. Then, loud enough for nearly every table to hear. "This is where you've seated me. No one in this room is worthy of sharing a table with me." Utter silence. Wine paused mid-pour. Cutlery froze above porcelain. Matthew looked up at her, his expression unshaken, not intimidated, not aggressive, just calm. He met her eyes. "I don't think that's true. Everyone here deserves to be treated with respect." The words were quiet, but they landed like thunder. The entire restaurant held its breath. Even Alexandra seemed to blink. She wasn't used to being corrected, especially not by men in pressed shirts with nothing but water in their glass. Her eyes narrowed. "Do you even know who you're speaking to?" Matthew gave the smallest nod. I do, but it doesn't change a thing. More silence. The pianist slowly took his hands off the keys. For the first time in years, Alexandra Sterling didn't speak first. Something flickered in her stare, something unsure. No backpedaling, no apology. Just a man looking at her with the same energy he gave his daughter when storms shook the windows and she asked if they were safe. The man across from her didn't try to impress her. He simply stood still, unshaken. And in that moment, without realizing it, Alexandra Sterling had met her match. Not in argument, not in power. In presence, in kindness, in quiet strength. And whether she knew it or not, something had shifted. She stared at him, at the man unshaken, at the man who didn't cower under reputation or softness disguised as steel. And then, without a word, she pulled out the chair across from him, sat down with the same grace she used in boardrooms, only this time her opponent wasn't fighting. He was just waiting. The restaurant exhaled. Staff looked on. Diners exchanged glances. The pianist dared to try a few accidental notes again. But at Matthew's table, the storm wasn't over. It was just quiet now. Alexandra set her gloves down with deliberate care. Then her voice like ice clinking in expensive crystal. You speak of respect like it's free, but it's not. Respect belongs to the powerful, to those who can afford to demand it. Matthew didn't flinch. He let her words settle like dust on the table before answering. That's not respect. That's fear. She tilted her head slightly, eyeing him like an anomaly she couldn't categorize. You think a man without power, without money, without a name, can ask the world for respect and get it? Matthew offered nothing but calm. I don't ask, he said. I live in a way that earns it. My daughter respects me. My crew trusts me. I don't need a tower or a last name, I just show up. For a heartbeat, Alexandra looked away, toward the candlelight reflecting off nearby glasses. Her mask didn't slip. But it cracked. Something in her breath, something in her stillness. Money shapes the rules, she said finally, whether you like it or not. People bend for power, they kneel for it. You've seen it yourself. Matthew nodded slowly. They obey it, sure. But obedience isn't loyalty. It's not devotion. It's not love. The way he said that word made her shift in her seat. Love. She hadn't heard it spoken like that in years, not without a contract attached. For long seconds, she said nothing. Then her voice dropped, lower, not cold now, just far away. You speak like someone who hasn't been burned. Matthew looked down at the table, fingers brushing the rim of his glass. I have. A pause. More than once. He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. But then quietly, he did. My wife passed away 4 years ago. Alexandra looked up. His eyes didn't break, only softened. Cancer, he said. She was everything, smart, funny, stronger than me, I think. He gave a faint smile, one without joy. Lily was 5. Too young to understand why Mom didn't come back home from the hospital. Too young to understand why dinner came with silence and Dad forgot lunch some days. Alexandra's expression shifted, but only slightly. Her posture held, but something behind her eyes dimmed. She knew grief, but she wasn't used to listening through it. Matthew didn't rush. For a while, I wanted to hate the world. It felt easier. But Lily needed something else. He looked directly at her. She needed to know that even after your heart gets shattered, you don't have to stay broken. For once, Alexandra had no reply. Across the linen and candlelight, power wasn't speaking. Presence was. No boardroom, no courtroom, no media spotlight. Just a space. A healed man speaking with honesty. And a guarded woman realizing for the first time. No one ever let her do this. No one ever offered silence without strings. Finally, she stirred. When people find out I have money, they change. She looked toward the chandelier now. Family, friends, even people I once loved, they see zeros, not me. Her jaw hardened. My own brother sold shares behind my back. Partners stole patents. Every promise came with a cost. She looked at him again, eyes sharp but the pain behind them clear. Love, that was the cruelest joke of all. Matthew listened, not surprised but not indifferent. Years of raising Lily alone had made him fluent in silence. He didn't interrupt, he didn't pity. When she finally finished, her eyes glimmered faintly in the candlelight. You call it punishment, she said. I call it survival. Matthew considered the words carefully. Maybe it started that way, he said. But survival can become a prison if you never open the doors again. Silence again. A different kind this time. Not guarded, just letting in air. He leaned forward, not forcefully, just close enough for his voice to carry. I don't know what you've lived through, but I know this. Hurt people often build walls so no one else ever gets in. A beat, but sometimes we forget we're the ones still stuck behind them. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. Held, let go. At tables nearby, life resumed in soft spurts, silverware clinking, hushed voices returning. But at the corner table, Alexandra Sterling sat in silence. And for the first time in years, truly listened. For the first time in years, she wasn't being analyzed. She wasn't being envied. She was being heard. She sipped her wine but barely tasted it, the glass turning slowly in her fingers. The storm inside her wasn't rage. It was remembering. Alexandra, quiet. You think dignity and kindness can stand against the world I live in. You have no idea what people are capable of when money is involved. She didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed locked on the glass, voice dropping into something between fury and confession. Alexandra. Family, friends, people I trusted, they all took. They waited until I needed them, and then they showed me their price tag. A pause. She laughed once, but there was no joy in it. My own brother stabbed me in the back for stock options. Partners took my patents after years of work, smiled and called it business. Matthew didn't interrupt. His hands were still folded in his lap. He listened like a man who understood pain didn't need answers, just space. Alexandra. And love, she whispered. Love was the worst lie of them all. Her voice caught. They said all the words until the contract was in their favor. Affection was just leverage. A silence fell over the table. The chandeliers flickered as if the air itself had paused for her. This wasn't the woman who walked into Bordeaux Hall with sharp eyes and cutting words. This was the weight she had carried, buried beneath the steel. And now it was out. When she looked up, tears didn't fall, but the edge in her voice had gone. What remained was worn. Matthew, I don't doubt you. I've seen what people can become when fear or greed get a hold of them. He leaned forward slightly. No one should carry betrayal like that. A pause, but punishing everyone for the pain a few caused. That doesn't protect you. It just keeps you alone. Her eyes flickered. Not in anger, in alarm. He had touched something raw. Truth she had never let anyone say out loud. Alexandra, barely above a whisper. You call it punishment. I call it self-preservation. Matthew nodded. Matthew sobbed. Maybe it started that way. But walls have two sides. A beat. And I think deep down, you know you built more than just protection. She looked away. He let silence return, not awkward, but human. Not pushing. Just waiting. Narrators. In the quiet lull between pain and pride, Matthew lowered his own walls. Not to prove anything, but to show her he wasn't just kind. He was scarred too. Matthew gently. I lost my wife, and with her a whole vision of the future. Her name was on it. He glanced at the flickering candle in the center of the table. Cancer, quick, brutal, unfair. He didn't flinch. I held her hand through chemo, hospital beds, and then I held my daughter's hand when we told her mommy wasn't coming home. Alexandra's stare softened. Her jaw clenched, not in anger but in recognition. She knew this kind of pain. Not romantic tragedy, but the kind that rips out your foundation. Matthew. Lily was 5. She asked if her mom got lost, if we should call someone to help her find her way back. His voice cracked just briefly. He cleared his throat and smiled faintly, the way you do when you've already cried the tears years ago. From that night on, it was me and Lily every day. And not once did I let myself believe the world owed me anything. He looked at Alexandra again, really looked. I chose to believe something better could still exist. She whispered without realizing. How? He met her eyes. There was no judgment, no lectures, just honesty. Because my daughter still looked at me like there was good left. And I couldn't let her grow up in a world where bitterness was normal. Narrators. She had told herself her coldness kept her safe. That mistrust made her strong. But now, across a simple table, sat a man who had lost as much. But chosen differently. Alexandra softly. And you trust again. Even after all that. He breathed deeply, his reply spoken like a vow he said to himself each morning. I trust slowly, but I trust, yes. He smiled then, warm, gentle, not flirtatious, just human. Because Lily deserves to know love didn't die with her mother. She exhaled long and quiet. That's brave. No, he said. That's being a dad. And in that moment, the billionaire who had ruled boardrooms and broken men with silence felt small, but not in weakness, in realization. Narrators. For most of her life, she'd measured strength in numbers, in control, in conquest. But now she saw a different kind of strength. One with no spotlight, no wealth behind it, only truth. She looked at him, not in judgment, not in rehearsed charm, but with genuine curiosity. You live without armors. Not without, he said, just with fewer pieces. He reached for his glass. Life broke enough of them off for me. She laughed once, quiet but genuine, a low, warm sound she didn't expect. Careful, she said. You're starting to sound like someone I might respect. He grinned. That would make both of us nervous. Something shifted. Not melted, but softened. The storm didn't vanish. But for the first time, it rested. It began with a message. Short, formal, from Alexandra. A thank you, nothing more. Matthew responded, polite, brief. But one message became two. Two became a small exchange. Then a shared article. Then a story, a joke, a question about Lily. Then, silence no longer felt necessary between them. Something ordinary and extraordinary began. They weren't friends, not yet. But they were no longer strangers. Weeks passed. One afternoon, Alexandra sent a text, tentative, unsure. Would Lily mind if I visited sometime? Matthew hesitated, then typed. She'll probably interview you about cartoons, but yes. That Saturday, her sleek black car turned down a cracked street lined with aging apartments. It was a far cry from the world she'd always known. And yet somehow it mattered more. Her coat didn't belong here. Her boots clicked awkwardly on the uneven concrete. She knocked, and when the door opened, Lily, braids a bit messy, socks mismatched. She looked up at Alexandra with no fear, no reverence, just pure 9-year-old curiosity. Are you the lady Dad had dinner with? Alexandra froze. She braced for judgment, for awkwardness, but all Lily did was smile. Do you like pancakes? Dad burns them, but I make shapes. Alexandra blinked, then laughed. Really laughed, surprised even by the sound of her own joy. Lily reached for her hand without hesitation. Come on, I'll show you my drawings. Inside, mismatched chairs, a table with scratches, the smell of coffee. And warmth. Not luxury, but home. Matthew greeted her with a quiet grin, the same calm that changed her life with a single sentence weeks ago. She stepped across the threshold. She didn't know it yet. But she wouldn't stop returning. One visit became another. Then a routine. Saturdays at the market. No private shopper. No assistants. Just Alexandra wandering crowded aisles, rubber banding celery and comparing apples while Lily rattled off pie recipes. Sunday walks in the park, Lily running ahead. Alexandra and Matthew walking side by side, talking about everything and nothing. Evenings at the apartment folded into simple meals and animated conversations. Pancake experiments, burnt toast, laughter that echoed without recognition of its healing. One evening, as Matthew fumbled with a skillet, Lily whispered, Miss Alex makes the best pancakes, ever. She didn't know the weight her words carried. But Alexandra did. She debuilt brands, signed billion-dollar deals, negotiated mergers that defined industries. But that praise hit deeper than any headline had in years. Miss Alex, not Miss Sterling, not ma'am, not CEO, just a child's invitation to belong. The name stuck. Miss Alex helped with school projects, stayed for movie nights, got flour on her designer blouses, folded laundry while Lily showed off her drawing award. She didn't ask herself if she belonged anymore. She felt it. Once she arrived with flowers wrapped in velvet paper. Lily raised an eyebrow and said, We like the cheap plastic ones, they last longer. So Alexandra brought those next time, and smiled when Lily put them in an old juice bottle on the windowsill. And still she kept her distance, a little. The old self whispered that this wasn't her life, that it was temporary, that she'd crush it if she stepped too close. But then came the storm. One evening, rain falling in sheets, wind pushing against the city. The lights flickered, then went out. Darkness, silence, then the scratch of a match. Matthew lit a candle, then another, then a third. 3 small flames glowed in the center of the kitchen. Lily, it feels like camping. Her giggles filled the room. They all gathered close at the table, wrapped in shadows and warm light. Matthew, story time. He told one of the bedtime tales he used to tell Lily, about a little bird who built a home from ribbons and bottle caps. His voice gentle, his rhythm familiar. Alexandra listened. Her smile soft, her eyes far off. Then Lily asked, "Miss Alex, can you tell a story too?" Alexandra hesitated. She wasn't used to being asked. Only needed, only scheduled. Never invited. But Lily waited. Matthew nodded. So under the candlelight she spoke. Soft at first, then stronger. A story about a girl who built a glass tower to protect herself. So high no one could reach her. But every time she looked down, she wished someone would climb anyway. When she finished, Lily leaned her cheek against her palm. If Miss Alex stayed here all the time, that would be so much fun. The sentence hit harder than it should have, and just gently enough to break something open. Narrators. In the quiet after thunder, surrounded by homemade pancakes and sticker-covered chairs. Alexandra Sterling, the woman who owned skyscrapers, realized what it meant to come home. She turned to Matthew, her eyes no longer strict, no longer armored. Just honest. Maybe it's time I stopped living in that tower. Silence and understanding. Matthew reached across the table. His hand, rough and strong, found hers. No grand gesture. No drama. Just a quiet answer. Together. Lily beamed. Does this mean we're a real family now? Alexandra laughed, through tears she didn't wipe away. Yes. The morning after the blackout was golden. Sunlight warmed the windows of Matthew's modest apartment. Somewhere outside, the city hummed back to life, but inside, time moved gently. Lily sat at the tiny dining table, tongue poking out as she colored in a worksheet. Her braids bounced with every scribble. Crayons rolled to the floor, jelly smeared on toast. Complete chaos. Alexandra sat beside her, sleeves rolled, helping cut out construction paper hearts for a school project. Her tailored blouse had flour on it from a pancake fail, and the diamonds in her ears had somehow vanished underneath one of Lily's pink hair clips. She didn't care. Across the room, Matthew leaned in the doorframe with sleepy eyes and a coffee mug, just watching the two of them. His world and hers wrapped into something whole. Alexandra looked up and caught his gaze. They smiled. It was unspoken but clear. This is what home feels like. Later, they walked Lily to school, now becoming a quiet morning tradition. No town car, no driver. Just a walk along damp sidewalks and under city trees just beginning to blossom. Lily skipped ahead in rain boots, asking questions no one was ready for. Does the moon follow the same sun as Mars? Do turtles know they're slow, or do they think they're fast? Matthew gave halfway answers. Alexandra tried a scientific angle. Lily didn't care, she just liked that they tried. At the school gate, she turned dramatically and crossed her arms. Lily. Okay, first rule, no hugging goodbye too long, you make it weird. Second, text me 3 emojis if you miss me. She squinted at Matthew. But not poop emojis, Dad, be mature. They laughed. She hugged them both and vanished into her school. One braid coming undone, one shoelace trailing behind, heart wide open. They walked back in silence for a while, both of them holding more than words. Halfway home at a quiet intersection, Alexandra stopped. She turned and looked at him. No smiles now, just honesty. Alexandra, gently. I used to think happiness was something you had to earn. A prize you claimed after proving yourself enough, building enough, owning enough. She shifted, exhaling. I spent so long holding myself up by accomplishments. And suddenly, I'm in a house with mismatched socks, sticky countertops, and a little girl who makes me feel like I already belong. She looked into Matthew's eyes. And I didn't earn this. I was just loved into it. He stepped closer. No big promises, no romantic speech. Just his hand reaching for hers. And her hand not hesitating. Narrators. She had conquered boardrooms, art collections, and the global market. But it took a quiet man and his daughter to teach her how to hold on to something far more rare. Peace. Their days found rhythm. Alexandra still oversaw her empire. She still made impossible deals. But she left meetings early now. To help with homework. To hear about soccer practice. To walk beside a man who never needed her title to see her worth. She wasn't visiting anymore. She was part of it. She learned how to pack Lily's lunch and how to draw stars in the corner like Matthew had taught her. Lily called it lunch with love. One day, Lily pulled Alexandra aside after school. Lily, serious. I really like having you here. But you don't have to be perfect to stay, okay? Alexandra had blinked. Words that simple, that pure, shattered 1,000 hours of therapy. Some nights were easy, others weren't. The grief still lingered in the edges of their lives. Sometimes Alexandra would freeze over small things, a missed text, an unexpected noise, and panic would threaten to pull her back into old versions of herself. But Matthew never ran from it. He waited, gave her space, reminded her gently, "You're safe now. Home isn't going anywhere." And on the nights when grief visited him, when he found old photos of Anna tucked into a kitchen drawer, she made coffee and sat beside him in silence. A quiet love. True love. One afternoon, Lily came home with a drawing that made Alexandra go still. 3 stick figures holding hands. One wore a tiara. That was clearly Miss Alex. One had coffee in one hand and tools in the other. Matthew, obviously. And Lily was wearing a sparkly jumpsuit, holding a glue gun. Above it, written in gold marker, "We may be different, but love makes us the same." Matthew smiled when he saw it. Alexandra wiped her eyes and didn't apologize. One weekend, while walking through the farmer's market, Lily was midway through a long speech about crunchy versus soft apples when she paused and tugged Alexandra's sleeve. Lily softly, "You know what's really cool? You don't feel scary anymore." Alexandra froze. Was I scary? Lily nodded without hesitation. At first, but now you smell like pancakes and hugs. Matthew burst out laughing. So did Alexandra. And with that, the last frost melted. On a warm night in June, as the city lights blinked far in the distance, and the air smelled of rain and citrus, Alexandra and Matthew stood on the small balcony with their hands interlaced. Inside, Lily was asleep. Fairy lights twinkled on her ceiling. A drawing of the 3 of them taped above her bed. Below them, streetlights and sounds of life. Above them, stars. Between them, the kind of silence that says everything. Alexandra softly, "Do you think this is forever?" Matthew looked at her steady. "I think forever isn't something you find. It's something you choose. And we keep choosing it, even when it's hard." She leaned into him, letting her forehead press against his. "Then I choose it." He kissed her temple. "Me too." Narrators. Forever isn't found in fairy tales. It's built in Tuesday mornings. In burnt toast. In storybook bedtimes and middle-of-the-night hurt feelings. In second chances we never expected, but said yes to anyway. Final scene, Lily's school, open house. The walls were bursting with artwork, handprints, wild crayon declarations of love. Parents wandered from one exhibit to another. Teachers gave speeches that no one really listened to. Matthew and Alexandra held hands instinctively, no longer hidden, no longer unsure. Lily bounced between friends like light, dragging Alexandra by the wrist toward her classroom. "Lily, you have to see my poster. Everyone else's is boring." She pointed toward one display. "This one's mine." A presentation board, bright and cluttered, glitter everywhere. At the top in giant letters, "My family is awesome and real." Drawings covered the board. Matthew with a mustache made of pancakes. Alexandra in heels, but holding a lightsaber. Lily in front of them both, between hearts and stars. At the bottom, in firm, glittery print, "Families aren't always made the same way. Sometimes you build them." Alexandra blinked back tears. Matthew chuckled softly. Lily stepped between them and took their hands. "Everyone thought I made that up, but I told them. Just cause you didn't see it happen doesn't mean it's not real." She squeezed their hands. "You guys are my favorite story." Narrator final lines. Alexandra Sterling had everything once. Power, prestige, possessions. But none of it ever felt like enough. Now she had coloring on the walls. A kitchen always half a mess. And a little girl who painted her nails with peelable glitter. And it turns out, this was more than enough. Because when love is chosen freely, when family is made day by day, that's not weakness. That's strength most people never dare to hold. So here is where we end. Not in a penthouse, not in a headline, but in a home, warmed by laughter, softened by time, and sealed with the quiet, irreplaceable truth that they chose each other.